We ended the last lecture with a problem. God is perfectly good, but the universe is not. There are all sorts of evils in the world, from the minor to the major, from the short-lived to the enduring. How is it possible for God to be, as we discussed in the last lecture, and yet for his creation to be filled with all kinds of evil? Let's consider one version of this problem in some detail. There are other versions, and we can consider those in other courses at Providence. I'm going to present this to you as an argument. Step one. If God is all good, he would want the universe to have no evil in it. Step two. If God is all-knowing and all-powerful, he could create a universe with no evil in it. Three. We're going to just combine 1 and 2. Therefore, if God is all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful, then the universe would not have any evil in it. 4. But there is evil in the universe. 5. Therefore, there is no being that is all-powerful, all-good, and all-knowing. Now, there are a couple of different ways, really a number of ways to respond to this. One is to simply show that some of the premises above are false. For example, it does not follow from the fact that God is all good that he would want the universe to have no evil. Perhaps the best possible world, the best possible universe, is one that contains evil. Just as the best movies contain evil, and the best songs contain silence, and the best pictures contain brushstrokes that on their own are ugly. Or just as it is better to climb to the top of a mountain and experience pain than to get to the top by helicopter, it may be better for the world to have and overcome evil than to not have it at all. So premise 1 is not obvious. Neither is premise 2. Right? So think about it like this. Premise 1, we can respond to it by saying, look, the best world might have to have some evil. In order for it to be the best, it might have evil that gets overcome, that gets defeated. Premise 2, right? Premise 2 tells us that if God is all powerful and all knowing, then he could create a universe without any evil. Well, we can challenge premise 2, but we got to think through it a little bit. Premise 2 is obviously true in one sense. Think about a one-rock world. So God could easily create a world with one rock, and in that world, the one-rock world, there'd be no evil. So yeah, God can create a world with no evil. But premise 2 might be false in another more relevant sense. Given God's aims, it may not be possible to have a world without evil. So here's the idea. You've got to take into consideration God's goals, God's aims for the creation. And once you take those into consideration, once you understand what God's aims are, it may be that in order to achieve those aims, the universe has to have evil. So premise 2 actually isn't true when we take into consideration what God's goals might be. So one way to respond to this version of the problem of evil is to cast doubt on the premises, just as we just did with premise 1 and 2, showing that there are plausible reasons to deny them. There's also an interesting argument that attempts to show that the truth of 4 actually points to God. Remember, 4 was the claim that the universe has evil in it. But look, if there is evil in the universe, then there has to be goodness. But if there's no God, then nothing is really evil or good. So from the fact that there really is evil and goodness in the universe, it follows that there must be a God, a perfect standard by which all acts, events, and persons are measured. So premise 4 actually requires the existence of God. That's fascinating. Again, Other courses here at Providence would develop that in more detail. These strategies of responding to the problem of evil are called defenses. They simply defend the existence of God against the problem of evil by showing that God and evil can both exist. There's nothing incoherent about the existence of God and the existence of evil. It is possible for God to exist and for evil to exist. Evil's existence does not imply God's non-existence. That's the idea. But another way to respond to the problem of evil is to explain exactly why God allows and continues to allow evil to exist. This is what Michael Horton says cannot be done with any kind of precision. Evil is, at bottom, a mystery, he says. But I think there is something interesting to say here, even taking that, the idea that evil is mysterious, on board. And one is this: evil has been seen throughout history as fundamentally irrational. It's a rejection of reason, of rationality. It is literally senseless. It cannot be made sense of. If it could, then it wouldn't be evil. But if that's the case, then we have a philosophical explanation for why there can be no explanation of evil. It can't be explained. It's part of its nature. There are attempts to do more than the above in history. So there are attempts to do what Horton says can't be done, and I find some of them actually to be more plausible than others and interesting. And one ancient response to the problem of evil, an explanation of why exactly God has created the universe as he has, is along the lines of what's called the O Felix Culpa response. And the basic idea here is that God aims to create and sustain a world that displays his love and beauty and goodness and power to the highest degree possible. And a world without any evil would not do that as well as a world with evil. A world with evil demonstrates that goodness and love are more powerful than badness and apathy. Furthermore, a world with sin allows God to show forth his grace and his justice in ways that a world without sin would not. Just think about the fact that our world is a world where God becomes one of us in order to reconcile us back to him. God takes the place of his enemies so that perfect justice is kept, and God absorbs their punishment and penalty so that grace can be given. No sin and God's justice and grace are not revealed as deeply. The incarnation and atonement only make sense in a sin-ridden world. And the incarnation and atonement reveal to us all sorts of things about God that we would otherwise not be in a position to grasp. And even with this, we can still exclaim, "Oh, the depths of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God! How unsearchable are his judgments, and how inscrutable his ways."